The data is in. Every single person watching this video is a professional player. With no exceptions, everybody here will be on a mission during Icecrown Citadel. Farming your 277 Ashen Verdict rep ring day 1, getting your guild's first Shadowmourne questline completed, and of course every single player watching will be killing Heroic Lich King week 1. There's really no chance all of us here will be stuck on Lich King progression for so long that Blizzard feels bad and gives us a buff. Since everyone here is a pro player, we need to plan and play like the professionals. Luckily, I've somehow joined a top guild on my server, and I've learned so many things during my short time before they kick me out. So here's my 5-step guide to get the most out of Icecrown Citadel as a pro player. The first step to play like a pro player is to stock up like a pro player. One underrated thing all the pros do is to actually expect to receive gear on the first raid night. You should have every relevant enchanting vellum and epic gem already set up in your inventory. That way you can immediately kit out new upgrades as you receive them. On Wotlk Phase Heroic, your key healer could be getting a 277 item level trauma to replace a 258 TOC weapon. Also, while we talk about consumes, we need to talk about Serenite bombs and sappers as well. The DPS checks in this raid are really tight, and on fights like Blood Queen, using sappers and bombs on CD can be the difference between success and failure. Rounding out the list, all the pro players that play Horde will be using Scourgebane drafts and infusions to make hitting damage checks that much easier. You can easily farm these in Tranquiline at my favorite hyperspawn spot. The second step to play like a pro player is to have the tools of a pro player. The biggest Icecrown Citadel tool all the pros are using is the Foji Weak Aura pack. The timers for every mechanic are basically perfect, and it has a billion overpowered features. For example, there's a giant crosshair that makes it basically impossible to mess up the ice blocks on Sindragosa. Whether private weak auras should exist in the first place is another question entirely, but if your guild has it, it makes a big difference in every aspect of the raid. Pro players are paying for it, but if you want to be a pro on a budget, the Thames pack will have most of these features and you don't have to pay a cent, so that's linked below the video. With consumes and weak auras out of the way, all pro players going into Phase 4 will have a gear strategy. Exactly how you plan the first 48 hours before ICC launches is the crucial first step. If you're missing any key item like Flare of the Heavens, you have to spam random dungeon finder as hard as you can until you get the required Defiler Scourge Stones. If you're planning on getting any early BOE pieces like legs or boots, you should also farm Primordial Serenite for 12 Defiler Scourge Stones each. Either way, you'll be likely putting in more than 10 to 15 hours per day, since on the PTR there was no limit to how many random dungeons you could do. Also, every pro is hitting that daily heroic quest for 2 Emblems of Frost, plus the satchel with 3 more. You'll also be seeing dedicated raid groups just to complete the weekly raid quest for 5 Emblems of Frost. Don't forget as well that the week after launch you'll see lots of Vault of Archivon groups. That's because Vault of Archivon 10-man drops 251 tier and 25-man drops 264 gear. If you get lucky and get a piece, it'll save you so many emblems. Another thing pros will be doing is planning their 10-man group. No pro player is pugging their 10-man, the gear is just too necessary and valuable for 25-man success. That being said, a lot of pro players will be trash farming 10-man in between heroic 25 attempts. Getting a 277 ring early is going to be the difference maker on fights like Putricide with insanely tight DPS checks. It's a lot easier to subscribe and join our knowledgeable and handsome community than it is to kill Putricide. Subscribe today and you won't regret it. So back to those tight DPS checks. Every pro player in guild has an exact idea of how they'll prioritize gear throughout the phase. Giving Deathbringer's Will to the right player early on will be the difference between getting that Blood Queen DPS check and wiping for the 20th time. Tier priority is also known in advance for top players. If you have an insane set bonus like Red Paladin, you're going to be prioritized early on. Remember that you do have to buy the 251 pieces with emblems no matter what. You'll only be able to farm 104 emblems the first week, so 2 sets will be far more important than 4 sets for progression, even if the set bonus is awesome like for Resto Druid. Although it sounds weird at first, you'll see top guilds funneling both the 264 and the 277 tokens to one player. That's because you have to have a 264 piece of gear to upgrade to 277 anyways. The fifth and most important thing pro players are doing with their guilds is planning raid strategies. Even the top guilds have limited time to play, since all of us are 30 now and we have to make the most of our raid nights. Even with the limited time, I still highly recommend doing 3 nights of raiding the first week. That's because you can get more BOEs and 277 rings during the off nights. The first night, it makes sense to do the easy and non-DPS check heroic fights like Gunship and Festergut. Then you should delay fights like Putricide and Blood Queen until the second night. That means you can fit in 10-mans to get gear to make the DPS checks trivial. Then on night 3, you can finally get 4 or 5 hours of heroic Lich King progression. But killing the Lich King will be next to impossible without these essential tips to maximize your DPS and your performance. Definitely check out this video next.